in the heart of Montana's untamed frontier, where the wind whispered through towering pines and the Bitterroot Mountains loomed like silent sentinels. Elias Kane lived alone in a sturdy log cabin, its weathered walls a testament to his solitary existence. At 42, Elias was a man of few words. His broad shoulders stooped from years of felling trees, and his gray eyes, shadowed by a sorrow he never spoke of, a wife lost to fever 10 years prior, and a daughter who followed her to the grave soon after. The townsfolk of Willow Creek, a half-day's ride away, called him the Lonely Woodsman, a kind-hearted giant who traded firewood for supplies, but kept his heart locked tighter than a bank vault. His days were predictable. Chop wood, tend his small garden, and sit by the fire at night, the crackle of logs his only companion. Yet, beneath his quiet strength, a hollow ache gnawed at him, a longing for something he couldn't name. One crisp autumn evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of amber and sorrow, a faint knock echoed at his door, an unusual sound in his isolated world. Opening it, Elias found a woman, her face gaunt but resolute, clutching a tattered shawl around her shoulders. Beside her stood 3 children, their eyes wide with fear and exhaustion. A boy of 12, a girl of 9, and a toddler clinging to her skirt. "I'm Abigail Turner," the woman said, her voice steady despite the tremble in her hands. "My husband's gone taken by bandits on the trail. We've nowhere else to go. Can you help us, just for the night?" Elias's heart, long accustomed to solitude, stirred with an unfamiliar pang. He nodded, stepping aside to let them in, his mind racing with memories of loss and the weight of their desperate eyes. Abigail, 35 and worn by grief, had lost her husband, Samuel, to a brutal ambush 2 weeks prior, leaving her and her children, Jacob, Eliza, and little Ben, to fend for themselves on the unforgiving trail. The cabin, though sparse, felt warm compared to the biting wind outside, and Elias offered them blankets and a pot of venison stew, his rough hands moving with care. Jacob, wiry and suspicious, eyed Elias warily, whispering to Eliza that they shouldn't trust a stranger. Eliza, her braid frayed and her face smudged with dirt, hugged her knees, too scared to speak, while Ben whimpered, sensing his mother's strain. Abigail thanked Elias softly, her voice cracking as she admitted they'd been walking for days, surviving on berries and hope. Elias, unsure of how to comfort them, simply said, "Stay as long as you need." That night, as the family slept, on makeshift pallets by the fire, Elias sat awake, his thoughts a tangle of guilt and curiosity. Why had he agreed so quickly? Was it pity or something deeper, a flicker of the life he'd lost? Over the next few days, a tentative rhythm emerged. Abigail, determined to earn their keep, insisted on cooking and mending Elias's worn shirts, her hands steady despite her exhaustion. Jacob, though guarded, followed Elias to the woodpile, mimicking his axe swings with a smaller hatchet, his pride warring with his need for guidance. Eliza, quiet and observant, began tending the garden, her small fingers pulling weeds with a fine rhythms, care that surprised Elias, who watched her from a distance, remembering his daughter's love for flowers. Little Ben, barely 3, trailed Elias like a shadow, his tiny hand tugging at the woodsman's coat, stirring a warmth Elias hadn't felt in years. Conversations were sparse at first, filled with awkward silences. "You don't talk much, do you?" Jacob said one evening, his tone half challenging, half curious. Elias shrugged, splitting a log with a single swing. "Ain't much to say when you're alone." Jacob nodded, as if understanding something beyond his years, and Elias felt a pang of connection, fleeting but real. Abigail, too, began to open up, sharing stories of Samuel's dreams of a new life out west, her voice heavy with love and loss. Elias listened, his own grief mirrored in her words, though he couldn't bring himself to share his past, not yet. Weeks turned to months, and the cabin, once silent, hummed with life. Eliza's laughter rang out when Elias carved her a wooden doll, her wariness giving way to trust. Jacob, eager to prove himself, helped Elias repair a leaky roof, their shared labor forging a quiet bond. Ben's first clear word, yes, struck Elias like a thunderbolt, his heart swelling with an emotion he dared not name. Abigail, though still haunted by Samuel's death, found strength in routine, her tired smiles growing warmer as she watched her children thrive. Yet, doubts lingered. Abigail worried they were a burden, her pride clashing with her gratitude. "We can't stay forever," she told Elias one night, her voice low as the children slept. "You've done more than we could ask." Elias, staring into the fire, felt a knot in his chest. "Ain't no trouble," he said gruffly, but inside, he feared their departure, the cabin's silence returning like a ghost. Winter brought challenges, a blizzard trapped them inside, and Jacob fell ill with a fever that tested Abigail's resolve. Elias, driven by a fierce need to protect, braved the storm to fetch medicine from Willow Creek, his thoughts consumed by the boy's pale face. When Jacob recovered, Abigail's tearful gratitude, "You saved him, Elias," unlocked something in him, a realization that he cared for them deeply. Spring arrived, painting the valley with wildflowers, and the family's bond with Elias deepened. Eliza taught him to braid her hair, her giggles easing the ache of his lost daughter. Jacob, now calling Elias Sir with respect, asked to learn how to track game, and their days in the woods became lessons in trust and survival. Ben's toddling steps followed Elias everywhere, his chatter filling the cabin with joy. One evening, as they sat around a bonfire, Abigail shared a rare smile, her eyes meeting Elias's with a warmth that made his heart stutter. "You've given us a home," she said softly. "I never thought we'd find that again." Elias, his throat tight, could only nod, his past sorrows fading in the light of their presence. By summer, the cabin felt like theirs, not just his. When a letter arrived from Abigail's kin in Oregon, offering her a place, she hesitated, her heart torn. The children, now fiercely attached to Elias, begged to stay. Jacob, once so wary, declared, "This is our home now." Eliza clung to Elias's hand, and Ben, perched on his shoulders, giggled as if the matter was settled. Abigail, watching them, realized she couldn't imagine leaving either. That night, Elias sat alone, his thoughts swirling. He'd built this cabin for a family he'd lost, but now, with Abigail's strength, Jacob's courage, Eliza's gentleness, and Ben's joy, he saw a new truth. They were his family, not by blood but by choice. The realization hit him like a sunrise, warm and undeniable. He stepped outside, where Abigail stood watching the stars. "Stay," he said, his voice raw. "This place, it's yours too. Always will be." Abigail's eyes glistened, and she nodded, a silent promise. As the children's laughter echoed from the cabin, Elias knew at last. He was no longer the lonely woodsman. They were his family, forever.